Close your eyes for a second and visualize your life. Now, ask yourself a question that most people avoid until their deathbed. Are you the one driving, or are you simply a passenger in a vehicle heading toward a destination you never chose? Carl Jung famously stated that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Most of humanity lives in a state of chronic sleepwalking, trapped in a mental architecture designed by their ancestors, their traumas, and the expectations of a society that needs you to be predictable. But there was a man who decided to break the seal. A man who, at the peak of his professional career, decided to abandon the safety of logic to venture into an experiment that his contemporaries labeled as madness. Welcome to the trail of Carl Gustav Jung's forbidden experiment. We are not here to analyze his biography, but to learn how to hack the reality that surrounds you from its deepest core, your own psyche. To understand the magnitude of what we are dealing with, we must go back to 1913. Carl Jung had just broken his relationship with Sigmund Freud. He found himself alone in an intellectual desert, haunted by apocalyptic visions and dreams that overflowed the psychiatric capacity of his time. Instead of fleeing from these visions, instead of medicating his anguish, Jung did something unprecedented. He decided to enter them. He sat at his desk, took a notebook, and began to dialogue with the figures emerging from his dreams as if they were living beings with their own will. This period of voluntary isolation gave birth to the Liber Novus, or the Red Book, a manuscript that remained hidden in a safe for decades after his death. Why so much secrecy? Because Jung had discovered the blueprints of the human prison. He realized that what we call I, or the self, is barely the tip of a colossal iceberg submerged in an ocean of archetypal forces. These forces are not mere ideas. They are dynamos of pure energy that shape your ability to love, your financial success, and your mental health. If you do not know these tenets of your mental basement, they will set your house on fire while you sleep. Imagine your mind as a 1,000-room mansion. The ego, that small voice that says, I am smart or I am a victim, is a tenant who only has access to one room, a small living room with boarded-up windows. The tenant believes he is the owner of the mansion, but he is unaware that there are dark corridors, secret laboratories, and basements that extend to the center of the earth. Jung's experiment is the act of taking a flashlight and starting to walk down those corridors. Most people spend their lives decorating the living room, changing the curtains, and painting the walls in bright colors to convince themselves that everything is fine. But the stench rising from the basement, that smell of repressed desires, unexpressed talents, and inherited fears, eventually permeates everything. That stench is your anxiety. That stench is your sense of chronic emptiness. Hacking reality does not consist of buying new furniture for the living room. It consists of going down to the basement and confronting what lives there. Jung taught us that external reality is not a solid and independent stage, but a projection screen. Every person you hate, every situation that irritates you, and every obstacle that seems to chase you is, in reality, a fragment of your own shadow projected outward. It is a law of psychological alchemy. What is not resolved within manifests outside as conflict. If the world seems like a hostile and treacherous place to you, it is not necessarily because it is so, but because your unconscious is projecting a shadow of betrayal so that you are forced to look at it. This is the first great secret of the forbidden experiment. The only way to change your external circumstance is by withdrawing your projections. It is a painful process because it involves accepting that the villain of your story often wears your own face. But it is, at the same time, the greatest act of liberation a human being can experience. By reclaiming your projections, you reclaim the energy you had given away to the external world. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become the architect of your perception. But how do you begin this descent? How can you, today, in the midst of your routine, begin to see the strings that move your hands? Jung discovered that there are very specific entry doors: dreams, disproportionate emotional reactions, and slips of the tongue. These are small cracks in the wall of the ego through which the light of the unconscious filters. However, there is one door that is the most dangerous and, at the same time, the most transformative of all. It is the door to the shadow. It is the place where you keep everything society told you was bad or inappropriate. And it is precisely there, in that emotional wasteland, where Jung found the key to true vital energy. Because the shadow does not only store your flaws, it stores your genius, your authentic sexuality, and your ability to say no to a world that wants you to be a slave. We are about to cross that first door. But before we do, you must understand that what you are about to discover cannot be unseen. Once you understand the mechanics of your shadow, the veil of reality is torn forever. You will no longer be able to blame luck, the government, or your parents. The responsibility for your reality will fall entirely on your shoulders. Are you ready to stop being a puppet and start seeing the strings? Crossing the threshold of the shadow is the first step of the hack, but to navigate the labyrinth without losing your sanity, you must understand the engineering of the machine you inhabit. Carl Jung did not see the mind as a single unit, but as a confederation of complex systems that often work with opposing objectives. To hack your reality, you must first identify which program is running in your background. Jung called these programs archetypes, universal patterns of energy that reside in the collective unconscious and that, whether we like it or not, act as the true puppeteers of our existence. Imagine you were born with pre-installed software. You are not a blank slate. You are the heir to millions of years of human experience. These archetypes, the warrior, the lover, the sage, the mother, the rebel, are not abstract concepts. They are psychic centers of gravity. When you become obsessed with power, it is not you who desires it. It is the archetype of the king in its shadow aspect that has taken control of your operating system. When you feel unable to set boundaries, it is the archetype of the orphan that is blocking your ability to respond. Jung's experiment consists of stopping your identification with the program and starting to observe the code from the outside, for you to understand how this hack applies to the dense matter of your life. Let's analyze 3 gears that are likely grinding your energy right now. The first of these is the persona. In ancient Greece, the persona was the mask worn by theater actors. Jung adopted this term to describe the social firewall we all build. It's the face you put on LinkedIn, the smile you fake at family gatherings, the good citizen image you project. The danger of the experiment is that most people end up believing they are the mask. They spend an industrial amount of energy maintaining this facade, hiding their vulnerabilities and their true desires. The hack here is brutal. Every time you act to please someone else's expectation, you are injecting a virus into your inner reality. You are telling your unconscious that who you truly are is not enough. The result is chronic exhaustion that no amount of coffee or vacation can cure. Your reality becomes gray because you are living the life of a fictional character, not your own. The second gear, and perhaps the most complex of all, is the projection of the anima and animus. Jung discovered that we all carry within us a counterpart of the opposite sex that acts as the bridge to our soul. The man carries the internal woman anima and the woman the internal man animus. But what happens in the real world? Since we don't know how to look inward, we project this image onto our partners. This is the origin of toxic romantic love. You don't fall in love with the person in front of you. You fall in love with your own unlived potential projected onto them. This is why, after a few months, the magic disappears and you start seeing the other person's flaws. What is really happening is that the mirror of reality is beginning to fail, and you start seeing the real person, not the archetype you hung over them. The hack consists of reclaiming that energy. If you constantly attract people who abandon you, it's because your internal anima or animus is wounded and seeking validation outside. Until you heal that internal relationship, reality will continue to present you with the same scenario of rejection, over and over, with different faces but the same script. The third gear is the internal saboteur, a manifestation of the shadow that activates every time you are about to make a leap in consciousness. It's that thought that says you're not ready, or that sudden flu that prevents you from going to a crucial interview. Jung understood that the unconscious is deeply conservative. It wants to keep you safe in mediocrity because the unknown is perceived as a death threat to the ego. To hack this system, you must learn to decode fear. Fear is not a signal to stop. It's a GPS pointing directly toward where your greatest treasure resides. The forbidden experiment teaches you that where your pain is, there is your path. If something terrifies you deeply, it is an unmistakable sign that this is the next file of your reality that must be hacked. But Jung went beyond individual psychology. He suspected that our mind is connected to the very fabric of matter through synchronicity. This is the point where the experiment becomes truly forbidden for materialistic science. Synchronicity is the appearance of a meaningful coincidence between an internal state and an external event. It is no accident that, just when you decide to change your life, a book, a call, or a chance encounter appears that opens the door for you. This happens because, by changing the flow of your internal energy, the server of external reality begins to render new objects and opportunities. You are not attracting things with positive thinking. You are altering the architecture of your psychic field, and reality, which is malleable, adjusts to that new configuration. Jung used to say that alchemy is nothing other than the transformation of the mind. The lead of your anxiety, your depression, and your blocks is not trash. It is the raw material for the gold of consciousness. But to perform this transmutation, you must be willing to burn the ego in the fire of truth. You must be willing to watch your certainties crumble. Most people want the benefits of the hack without paying the price of the process. They want to change their reality while maintaining their old identity. And that, according to the laws of the psyche, is a mathematical impossibility. To go deeper into this experiment, Jung used a tool he perfected himself in his tower at Bollingen: active imagination. It is not a passive meditation. It is an act of will where you enter your own internal world and face these archetypal figures. You talk to them, you demand answers. You ask them to show you the contract you signed before you were born. In the silence of your own abyss, you will discover that there are no judges out there, only fragments of yourself waiting to be integrated. The mechanics of the psyche is an infinite hall of mirrors. But once you learn to identify the hand holding the mirror, you stop being a victim of the reflection. You are beginning to understand that reality is a collective dream from which you can begin to wake up individually. The code is there, written in the language of symbols and dreams. You only need the key to read it. But beware, once you start talking to the unconscious, it starts talking back. And its messages are not always what the ego wants to hear. Its messages usually demand sacrifices: the sacrifice of your comfort, the sacrifice of your excuses, and, above all, the sacrifice of the person you think you are so that the person you are destined to be can be born. Are you prepared for the final phase of the experiment? We are about to move from theory to alchemical praxis. We have reached the absolute core of the experiment. If you have followed the trail this far, you have understood that your reality is not a wall of solid granite, but a fluid architecture that responds to the depth of your consciousness. But theory, however fascinating it may be, is nothing more than a map. And as Jung famously reminded us, the map is not the territory. To truly hack your inner reality, you must stop being a reader of maps and become an alchemist of your own matter. The transmutation we seek is not the turning of lead into physical gold, but the transformation of the inertia of your unconscious into the absolute sovereignty of your spirit. This is the practical protocol of the forbidden experiment, divided into 3 specific acts of will that you can begin to execute this very night. These are not suggestions. They are the gears of a psychological engine that, once started, cannot be stopped. The first act is what I call the detection of the crack. The system of your reality always leaves traces when something is not aligned. These traces are not found in major life events, but in the small, subtle synchronicities you typically ignore. To begin the hack, you must maintain a synchronicity log for the next 7 days. Do not just write down what happens externally. Record the emotional state you were in just moments before the event occurred. If you think of someone and that person calls you, do not dismiss it as just a coincidence. Ask yourself, what internal need of my psyche summoned that call? By doing this, you are training your mind to recognize that the veil between the inside and the outside is far thinner than you were taught. You are beginning to see the threads of the web before you even attempt to move them. You are teaching your ego that it is not a victim of a random world, but an observer in a responsive field. The second act is the face-to-face encounter, the technique of active imagination. Jung practiced this in the profound silence of his tower at Bollingen, but you can do it in any quiet corner of your home. Choose an emotion that is currently blocking you, be it the fear of failure, an overwhelming sense of loneliness, or an inexplicable, simmering rage. Sit down, close your eyes, and allow that emotion to take a physical form in your mind's eye. Do not judge it. Do not try to change it or fix it. Let it appear as a figure, an animal, or a symbol. Once you have it standing before you, speak to it. Ask it with absolute sincerity, what part of my energy are you protecting? Or what price are you charging me to keep this reality in place? Do not invent the answer with your logic. Wait for the answer to emerge from the void of the unconscious. This is the ultimate hack because you are dialoguing directly with the programmer of your shadow. By giving a voice to what was previously repressed, the energy that this figure consumed just to stay hidden is suddenly liberated. It is like reclaiming gigabytes of psychic RAM from a hidden background process that was slowing down your entire life's operating system. The third act is the most difficult of all, and the one that stops most seekers in their tracks, the sacrifice of identity. You cannot enter a new reality while carrying the corpse of the person you used to be. Every hack requires a loss. Every upgrade requires a deletion. If you discovered that your lack of abundance is a projection of your victim archetype seeking pity, you must be willing to sacrifice the comfort of being pitied. If you discover that your loneliness is a shield for your wounded sage archetype that fears rejection, you must sacrifice your pride in being alone and misunderstood. Alchemy requires fire, and that fire is your will to burn the labels that provide you with security but keep you imprisoned. Jung argued that the question is not who am I, but what am I becoming? Hacking is not about adding things to your life. It is about stripping away the obstacles that prevent your true self, your divine core, from emerging to the surface. As you apply these 3 acts, you will begin to notice a disturbing phenomenon. Reality itself seems to give way. Doors that were previously bolted shut begin to open on their own. Conflicts that seemed eternal dissolve without effort. This is not magic. It is the natural result of having aligned your internal engine with the external projection screen. You have moved from being a mere shadow in Plato's cave to being the one who carries the torch. But remember Jung's warning, with the great power of consciousness comes a heavy responsibility. You can no longer return to the blissful ignorance of blaming fate. From this point forward, every corner of your reality is your own creation and your own accountability. This experiment does not end with this video. Individuation is the work of a lifetime. It is a process of constant distillation where you separate what is genuinely yours from what was imposed upon you by culture, religion, and family. At the end of the road, what remains is the individual, the one who is indivisible, who is no longer fragmented between what they show and what they hide. This is the only man or woman who is truly free, the one who has hacked the simulation of the ego to live from the truth of the soul. You have traveled a long way in these minutes. Many have abandoned this video because their internal resistance would not allow them to look this deep into the abyss. If you are still here, it is because the experiment has already begun within you. You are no longer the same person who clicked on this title 20 minutes ago. A seed of suspicion has been planted in your unconscious. The suspicion that you are far more powerful and far more complex than you ever dared to dream. The reality you see around you is waiting for your next command. But this time, ensure that the command does not come from your fear, but from your integrated essence. The veil has been torn. The code is exposed. What you do with it from this moment on is your true masterpiece, the great work of your life. If this journey through the mind of Carl Jung has resonated with the seeker inside you, I invite you to become a part of our community. Here, we do not look for easy answers. We look for the right questions. Subscribe and hit the bell, because this is only the first step of a much deeper descent. In the videos to come, we will continue to dismantle the mechanisms of the shadow and explore the forbidden territories of the psyche that others are too afraid to mention. Now I leave you with a task for the silence of your night. Before you fall asleep, ask yourself, what part of my current reality is a lie I tell myself so I do want to have to change? Do not look for the answer in your logic. Look for it in the whisper of your unconscious. Leave your answer in the comments if you feel you have the courage to bring it into the light. By writing it down, you are already beginning the process of integration. I will see you in the depths. Remember the words of the master, he who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside, awakes. It is time to stop dreaming.